Hello, everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel. And today I have another video for you all. Today, we are going to be talking about how you can use kink to help you reconnect with your body. This is something I talked about very briefly in a video a couple of weeks ago. And ever since then, I've had people ask me to talk about it. Like, please, Evie, we need the advice. How can you use kink to reconnect with your body? That would be an awesome conversation. So we are having that conversation today. Basically, my goal here is to talk about what this is, how you can use kink to reconnect with your body, obviously, but also why we should do this and what you should know beforehand before you get into it. And then just like some ideas for how to do it, right? Like scene ideas, how to incorporate it into a relationship, power exchange, all that kind of stuff. Now, I don't have a script. I have some notes. This is going to be kind of top of the dome, maybe a little bit rambly, but hopefully you all will enjoy that because I just wanted it to be more of an authentic conversation. I will say, before I get into anything, I do need to warn you all, if you are someone that is dealing with trauma, PTSD, anything with like disassociation, depersonalization, derealization, that flavor of stuff, I would personally not recommend pursuing any of these techniques unless and until you get the go-ahead from a mental health care provider. I am not one of those, so I cannot tell you when you might be ready to do that. I would just advise some caution because this can actually make some of those issues worse depending on where you are at in processing all of that. So just be cautious, okay? I don't want to make anyone's experience worse, so just be aware of that. Go into this and if you have any issues, you're not really sure what you're doing, please talk to your mental health provider about what they would advise you to do. So with that being said, when I talk about reconnecting to your body, what I am referring to is like literally being comfortable, being in your body and being aware of and consciously sort of processing your somatic experiences. And I think for a lot of people, we don't tend to do this. I think it's very common, especially in our modern society, to not be very connected to our bodily functions, how we feel day to day, because it's advantageous to ignore those things. Usually for a lot of us, right, from the time we're pretty young, we're sitting at a school desk for most of the day. We get home, we sit at a desk to do homework, and then we go to sleep and we rinse and repeat. And maybe there's some time in there when we're like laying on a bed, on the couch, staring at a phone. And then when we're adults, we're also at a desk and we're sitting and we're driving and we're sitting at a desk and then we're sitting on our phones and we're sitting in meetings. There's a lot of sitting, a lot of long periods of very just no movement, very stagnant environments. And because of that, it just causes us to sort of come out of our bodies a lot of the time and not really be present because we're not moving around. We're not really doing anything. In addition, a lot of us also struggle with memories and messages from childhood and growing up that make us uncomfortable being in our bodies, right? Like that could be very like bullying type things. It could be like body judgments, not feeling comfortable, kind of being aware of ourselves. Also negative memories of essentially forced physical movement, right? Like having to run the mile and doing PE and how like embarrassing all of that was and uncomfortable it was. And so a lot of us develop a very negative relationship with movement and awareness of our bodies because basically every step of the way we're like shamed about it, we're guilted about it, we're forced into doing it, and that does not create a positive association with like being present in our own bodies. So for a lot of folks, we just disconnect, and it can also be something that even into adulthood, we can end up disconnecting more, not even just because of everyday life stuff, but also because of like chronic health issues, chronic pain, trauma, right? Those things I mentioned before. It can cause us to just not want to be in ourselves and be very aware of what's going on in our bodies and what we're consciously feeling and processing. Now, you might think, okay, well, but when I'm doing kink and I'm doing this like heavy impact play scene, of course I'm in my body because like it's so painful. Not necessarily. There's nothing implicit in doing kink that makes it so you are like present in your body. Like if you are in subspace, chances are you're probably not really like super present in your body. Because for a lot of people, the type of subspace they experience is like floaty, out of body, like you're sort of beyond the pain. It's an out of body experience for a lot of people, or some degree of that at least. And a lot of people have a very cognitive approach to thinking about their kink, like literally thinking about it, and also when they are in a scene, what that you're doing and like consciously processing it. Like, oh, I hope he doesn't hit there in the same spot again. Oh, that was like a little bit off aim wise. Oh, I really hope he keeps doing that. I hope this happens. Like you're aware of like yourself, the actions that are happening, their perception of others, if you're going to go into subspace or not, like a million other things you were thinking about. And so we're distracted by all that. We're just like cognitively thinking about it. And then we kind of hope that like subspace eventually arrives and like happens to us, even though we're like consciously processing this. And there's tons of parallels to real life things that connect to this same thing in kink, right? Like a lot of people during like vanilla sex, they become very disconnected because they're like thinking about the groceries and like, oh, my inflation is really bad, or like what's happening at the office, or oh no, like I should visit my grandparents. Like you just end up going 50 levels away from where you're trying to be, which is like in the present moment in your body, like actually experiencing those things as opposed to them like passively happening to you. And it's hard to walk away from that because it's so easy to get into that state of just like, yeah, la, la, this is happening. I'm gonna go over here, la, la, la. Like, even if it's really good, we can end up just like wandering off over here and staying wandered. And there's lots of reasons why that can happen. I don't have any studies in front of me right now, so I'm not really gonna postulate about why, but like, it's a thing that occurs very, very frequently. So we have this tendency to come out of our bodies for a lot of reasons. And then when we attempt to be in our bodies, oftentimes we process it in a very cognitive first way, which to me defeats the purpose of like trying to be in your body. Because if you're briefly being in your body and then immediately going back to a thought, like you've done it, you've glanced by it, but you've not really stayed there. And I want people to stay in there. Like I want you to embody the experience, not just like, whoop, we checked off the list, right? We checked it off the list. Here we go. I did the thing, and now I'm back to like thinking in my head very like cognitively and actively about like, you know, how the scene's going and how I'm feeling and what's happening. And there's certainly a degree of overlap, and I think you can actually use cognition as a tool for helping you be aware. There is a feedback loop there, but I think we tend to over-focus on, like, the cognitive things. I think we're generally biased, like, culturally as, like, a brain first, body second, very, like, top-down approach to managing it. So even, like, thinking about it that way of, like, top-down, brain is in charge, body is secondary, body must listen. And that, I think, is sometimes very negative for people. And I think if you're someone who enjoys kink as a form of escapism, it makes sense that you'd want to stay more in your head about it, or just not be thinking or feeling anything at all and just getting to float away and relax and not have to worry about any of that. I think that's still very valid. But it is a different approach, I think, if you want to be like in your body, consciously processing what's happening and staying connected to that, as opposed to it kind of being that more like glancing off thing I was talking about earlier. That's more how I experience it. So it's not really about like, oh, this is like a better way of doing kink. This is maybe one extra tool or scene type you can have in your scene toolkit that you might get some benefit from. So I would say if you're somebody who's wondering if you could benefit from this or not, I'd evaluate, did anything I just say resonate with you? Are you somebody that tends to be very like conscious about a million other things when you are doing a scene, right? Do you think about your grocery list? Do you think about the last time you had a scene? Are you thinking about the past, the future, literally anything except for the present moment? How does it feel when something is happening in your body? Are you aware, like very top to bottom, what is happening, right? Like how you feel in like your shoulders? Or does it like surprise you when your partner says like, oh, relax your shoulders, because you don't even realize how much tension you're holding on to? Or if maybe you do something like bondage, right? If you're in one position for a long time, do you tend to kind of zone out from it? Or do you like stay in that space and kind of savor it, like what's happening like with that rope pressing into that particular body part? That's what I would think about. That's kind of a vague general overview, but I think this is so common. Like almost everyone who does kink is going to have at least some experiences where they're not really staying connected with their bodily processes and how they're feeling in the moment when things are happening in their body. So that's what I would look for. If you are looking to try this with a partner, I think, or even just by yourself, honestly, anywhere you want to do this, I think in order to start processing feeling safe in your body when you're doing kink and using kink as a tool to get there, the number one thing is you have to build a safe space for that to happen in. Because you can have the most amazing scene, but if your body doesn't feel safe in this space, you're not going to be able to get to where you want to go. So that means evaluating the space on like every possible level. That's like temperature, lighting, location, any previous history in that space, right? Like if you had a scene go really wrong there before, relatively recently, maybe you don't want to be trying to do like a heavy processing scene in that environment. Just that makes sense. I would also think about things like the music, other ambient things that may be going on, right? Like, okay, are there smells? Are there candles? Some things can be overly distracting, whereas some things can prompt us to be calm. I know some people, they love having music on. I'm one of those people. And other people, they can't have music on because it's always going to be distracting and they're going to like start thinking about the music and like listening for the next song as opposed to staying in the present moment. So it depends on what works best for you, and you might have to do some troubleshooting. But what I like to do if I'm thinking about like a space I want to set up, like just for you right now, think about if you pictured a calm space, a calm, safe space for you, what would that look like? Is it dark? Is it bright? Is it outside? Is it inside? Is it a really wide open space? Is it more kind of closed up and nestled together? Are there a lot of people around? Are you by yourself? Are there any smells, sights, sounds? Is it in like a house? Is it in a more like a BDSM dungeon type area? Like, what does that environment look like? Of course, if your fantasy is like a Renaissance castle or something, you're probably not going to be able to make that, but you can take elements from that and put it into the environment. It's something I actually talk about in the class that I do that's about how to make a scene space anywhere. Like, think about what your fantasies are and then think about the elements you can take from those fantasies and put into real life. Because, like, yeah, you can't do things in a Renaissance castle necessarily, but maybe you really like having super, like, plush rugs and like the texture of a rug is like something you're really into the idea of like being dragged along or something, right? You can take those elements and figure out how to put them into real life. And I think it's also about like creating an intentional calm response in that environment once you do make it. I think initially, before you even do anything with a partner, it's a good idea to do some work just on your own, because really this is more a scene you're going to be doing with yourself. Your partner is facilitating it, but at first it's not really necessarily going to be a direct back and forth because you're building a new rapport essentially with your partner, but your first partner is your body, basically. You're sort of doing a coat topping scene with your body. It's like one additional component. So that's one way of thinking about it. But I'd recommend before you start playing with your partner, having some time to focus inward on yourself. I actually have recently found that Fitbit, of all things, has some really nice mindfulness exercises. There is a difference between meditation and mindfulness. And depending on what feels comfortable to you, you may get different benefits from them. You might be someone who likes doing maybe like a walking meditation by themselves outside and like being in nature before coming back into a scene space and bringing in that calm energy with you. Or it might be about like being very like physically aware of the present moment and like being aware of like what's happening in the room, how you're feeling, kind of passively monitoring your heart rate, your breathing, any tension you have in your body, and then trying to just get your body to be on a level you want it to be on, right? Like slowing things down, taking slower, deeper breaths. Diaphragmatic breathing, really, really key. I'm a massive fan of diaphragmatic breathing. If you don't know what that is, go ahead, Google it, find a tutorial on it. You can go ahead and watch later after this. But like calm, very deep, intentional breaths and like taking advantage of that cognitive processing, you can tell your body, okay, this is a safe space. I am calm. I'm relaxing my body and kind of like calling out each body part and then like progressively relaxing it. I'm not a guided meditation instructor, so I don't know if that's the best way to say that, but like you can find lots of things, YouTube, different apps, fitness apps, Fitbit, Apple Watch probably, I don't know, like they have all kinds of guided mindfulness sessions and meditation sessions you can do to kind of set yourself up for the mental and the physical space, both being right for your body to feel safe. So we're kind of using two things to make the third thing be more able to relax. I find for a lot of people, if you haven't really like processed any of this before, it's very likely that you are holding some kind of tension or stress you're not really realizing going into a scene space, right? You're worried about how you look. You're worried about how your hair is done. You're worried about if you're still attractive to your partner, if you're going to be able to play for long enough. You're anxious about how much time you have. And that's all going to be really distracting. You can take some time before the scene starts to kind of recognize that and allow that to kind of just pass through and go along on the wind, not hang on to it, and then decide consciously that you are going to let whatever happens in the moment be in the moment, and just if anything comes up later, just let it kind of it's there, you recognize it, you're not trying to consciously suppress it or force it to go away, but you're just kind of letting it float off on its own. So that's more or less a technique. Again, not a meditation instructor, so that's kind of just what I know how to do, but that is where I would start. Then you get into bringing in your partner into the scene. It's also really good if they can do this for themselves. Now, I'm talking about this mostly from, I realize, a submissive and bottom perspective. We're going to be the person who is primarily receiving sensations and doing this. I think as a dom or a top, you can absolutely do this as well, though I don't really have experience doing that, so I can't speak to it, but it certainly is possible. Now, as a bottom, as a submissive, coming into a scene space with your partner, I think the next element is like feeling safe with your partner. If you don't feel safe with this person, don't do this kind of scene with them. Don't do it with a stranger. Probably don't do it as pickup play because you're not really going to have the rapport necessarily to do this with somebody who doesn't know you that well. You have to have somebody who like knows your cues, knows your body, and like you feel fully comfortable and confident with. If you don't have that, it's probably not going to go super great. But assuming you have that, you can then welcome them into this space and you can start to do some things together. I really like as a starter thing, I also recommend this for like there's a lot of overlap here between primal play and everything we're talking about. I personally think that the reason why primal play is so popular right now is because we are starving for instinctual bodily awareness. We are starving for that kind of connection, and like primal play is kind of the way to do that in kink currently. I think these techniques can apply to basically any kind of kink you want to do outside of like very mental aspects of kink that are strictly in that realm, but they most of the time it can overlap into this. So I think primal play is very much connected to this. This is something that I do before primal play if I have the opportunity to, is I like to put my hand on my partner's chest and then they do the same thing with me and we just take some turns breathing. We're not trying necessarily to do anything. We're just seeing where it's at. And then slowly the dominant or the top partner, if somebody's the dominant or the top, I guess this could also happen with switches too. But one person starts to take the lead on the breath. I've also done this as the submissive or the bottom myself, where I start to try to take the lead on the breathing. And then one person is like slowly calming the breath, breathing in and out more and more slowly, taking deeper and deeper breaths, and then just like thinking about how it feels to be connected to that person, and just sensation wise, just really staying on top of like, this is how their palm feels pressed against my clavicle, and this is how they're like, I'm noticing on myself, right? Like I have like calluses on my fingers from weightlifting, and I can feel that when I'm pressing it into the very top of my ribs, and I can feel on my skin, and I can feel that I'm kind of sweaty because it's like 90 degrees in here right now, probably. Like those are the kind of things you just like stay with, and just eventually you move from like cognitively thinking about it and like labeling it with words to just like physically focusing on it. I tend to be a really strong visualizer. That's what I do. So I visualize. I move from kind of consciously thinking about it in words to thinking about it in like a picture. So even when I have my eyes closed, I'm holding it in my mind's eye and like focusing on that feeling and that fall and rise of the chest, and like it can be so deep. Even just having the hand of the chest, you can get so much out of that, just like being with your partner. And that's really fantastic. So I really like doing that with a partner, having like shared breathing. It can also be like forehead to forehead, or like doing a deep hug and like rocking together, because rocking tends to be very like a self-soothing behavior. So if you're rocking with a partner and going back and forth with them, I'd be cautious with this a little bit. I know for me, I can feel a little claustrophobic when a partner like hugs me too much, but light, open hug, communicate with level of pressure or closeness is good for you, and then just like rocking back and forth. You also do this by yourself too when you're trying to like calm down for the scene space, doing that kind of like soothing, self-soothing body language and like rocking back and forth can be very soothing for people. So that's some ways to kind of like get into the right headspace to do this and like create that good environment to be in a process where you can be with your body. So how do you actually do a scene where you are going to be with your body actively? And I really love sensation play for this. You might know 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is, and I'm probably going to forget the order of them. I think it's 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And oftentimes we're doing kind of that like pinging off thing where we're like, ooh, I see a light. Ooh, I see a door stopper. I see a pillow. I see my dog. I see a camera. And we're just like, we're labeling it and then like moving on. We're not really staying with that process of being with that physical thing. And when we get down to it, a lot of that's like very externalized. And so I like to do sort of a more inner version of this where it's not just like focusing on the outer world. It's kind of like starting outside and then working our way inside. So for me, that might look more like I'm going to find a handful of things I can touch. I don't think the rules for this are very strict. Like it has to be 5, then it has to be 4. Like if you only have 3 things, that's fine. So for sensation play, that might be like we're going to do touch with like a hairbrush and we're going to feel the hair running along the top of the skin and it moving back and forth. And oh, it feels different when it's going in the opposite direction. And oh, it feels very different when it's on the underside of my knee versus the top of my leg. And you're really like fully focusing on just that one sensation happening. And then you move on to like, ooh, now here's a different one. Now we're like doing an ice cube. I'm like, oh, it's melting. And that's the duality of both the like the firmness of the ice and then how like liquid the water is. And there's sort of like 2 things kind of happening at once. So it's like sort of weird, right? And then you're moving on to the smells, right? Which could be like a candle. It could be your partner's fragrance. It could be something that you're wearing. It could be just the ambient normal way that like your house tends to smell, or like the smell of something that just blows by in a breeze, whatever, because you have an open window, and being with that, and then eventually refocusing on like, as I'm processing these things, like what am I feeling in my own body, right? Like it's not just that there is like a hairbrush that I'm feeling, but I'm feeling on my skin, the very top level, and I'm like using my fingernails to try and like talk about this as it's happening for me. Like I'm feeling the fingertips go down on my skin and there's like, ooh, there's a little bit of drag there, which is interesting. And oh, I can feel like sort of the tops of my nails too and how like they're different lengths from each other. Like it's trying as much as possible to get as much detail about every little thing. Like as opposed to just like glancing at it and going back, I want you to like put all of your focus, all of your brain energy onto just sensing what that one thing is like, and then bringing it back into your body and then how it makes your body feel. Before you even start getting into a scene, and this could be impact play, whatever, and even doing something like this as well, you can also think about like labeling and going down like what is happening in your body as it's happening, just like gently noticing it during a scene. Like, oh, I notice I'm really keeping a lot of tension in my shoulders, or oh, like my knee kind of hurts. That hasn't really happened before. Like, and then trying to adjust that, because I find a lot of people that struggle with like masochism or like suspension bondage, oftentimes they're inadvertently holding a lot of tension in a not productive place for the thing they're trying to do. Like if you were doing an impact play scene after every single strike, you were like tensing up both of your entire legs. Like the next time you get hit, your body is trying to protect itself from something it perceives as being dangerous. And you'll actually feel better doing the scene if you can learn how to relax those muscles. Most of the time, there are people who are masochists that really like the sensation and the greater intensity level when they're fully tense. But for most people, what's more beneficial is going to be able to be fully relaxed, because you're tensing because your body doesn't feel safe. And so if you can tell your body, if we are here, we are safe, we can relax, we want this, we like this, we enjoy this, kind of repeating a little bit of a mantra, and then just like focusing on each muscle as you go down and progressively trying to relax it and unclench, and then just like giving yourself a little positive affirmation after every single time you're able to stay relaxed. You're like, yeah, I did it, I stayed relaxed. Again, using that cognitive processing to help us with feeling good in our body, because it's very much a back and forth feedback loop. But eventually, I think the goal, at least for me, is to be in a place where I'm not necessarily doing like little cognitive things all the time. I'm just like fully being present in the moment. And I realized maybe I haven't explained like what being fully present in the moment is, but essentially it is what it sounds like. It's something that's like in yoga, meditation, anything like that. It's where you're just being in the now, experiencing whatever you're experiencing, not anticipating what's coming next, not regretting what's happened before, not wishing something would be the way that it was before. You're just here, you're just processing your where things are at. And in order to be able to do that, you have to be safe. Because if you're not safe, you're going to be trying to learn from past things to avoid past things, or you're going to be anxiously anticipating the future because you don't want bad stuff to happen. That's why evaluating and getting to a place of safety is so critical for this working. Now let's talk about how you can use power exchange to facilitate this happening. And the best way I can think of to do this is if you're somebody who is not super comfortable being in your body, because when that happens, maybe some uncomfortable things might come up. Not necessarily anything huge, again, no trauma things, but just I don't want to have to think about the fact that my back hurts, that kind of level of stuff. Having your partner order you to be in your body and then name out loud what is happening. I mean, one, that can kind of get into embarrassment, humiliation territory a little bit, but also it's a very high level of trust. It's extremely vulnerable to say everything that you're thinking and feeling about your body as you're going through it step by step. I feel like my toes are really cold because I've been sitting cross-legged for a very long time, and now that I've moved my legs, they're starting to get some warmth back, and my legs are clammy because it's been so hot outside. There's not air conditioning here. You're naming what your body is experiencing, you're relaying that to a partner, and then they can give you orders for all right, now I want you to relax. Now I want you to relax this body part. Now relax this body part. And then you can do that. You can repeat yes, sir, yes, ma'am. If you want to go in that direction with honorifics, you can also do that too. I think this is one of the best things about power exchange relationships is that we can use it to kind of hack our own brains, because sometimes we don't want to do something for ourselves, but suddenly when a partner wants it, that's when it works for our brains to cooperate and get along with the program. So I like using it for that reason. I think when you are also doing this as well with a partner, something you can do too that's, again, it's more on the edge of this could be a scene, it could also just be an intimate interaction, is progressively touching your partner, kind of doing a sensation play scene where your body and your partner's bodies are the instruments. So you start out just sitting with them or standing up, whatever's comfortable for you, and then you just touch over the uncovered parts of your partner's body, right? So forearms, hands, not anything sexual. The goal of this is actually explicitly to not be sexual at first and to just enjoy touching each other's bodies, breathing, moving in ways that feel authentic, right? If you want to move closer to something or farther away. Because I think also something that we can get out of this experience is more authentically knowing where our comfort level is at, more authentically knowing what our boundaries are. Because if we spent so long ignoring our bodies, ignoring our wants, ignoring our needs, not being comfortable in our bodies, of course we're going to get to a place where it's I don't really know what my boundaries are. I don't really know what I'm okay with, because you haven't been given permission to explore that at all. So when you can stay in your body and stay in the moment and genuinely, authentically be actually, I don't really like it when my partner touches the back of my neck. That's a really big ick for me. Doing a thing like this where you've set up a very safe space to intentionally be totally authentic, that might be the first time you ever had the opportunity to stop and think, actually, this isn't something I enjoy doing. So you start out just doing very innocent areas, basically, nothing sexual, not trying to arouse anyone, but moving in different ways, trying different types of sensation, right? So you could do rhythmic stuff like this, you can do tapping, you can do light, pinching maybe, stroking, running nails across, maybe doing a little tickling thing if you want to be silly or funny about it, but just exploring different types of sensations and how that feels both to give and receive and how your body is responding to that. And then as you go along, the more you do this exercise, you can change it from something that's just like very non-sexual into doing something that is more sexual, and having it be something that incorporates like the breasts or the nipples or other erogenous zones that you might have. I mean, really, the whole body can be an erogenous zone, but like in the conventional sense of it, right? Kind of moving into that territory and touching in that way. And that actually can be a really beautiful experience. I think if you're someone, a top, dom, sub, whatever, you have a partner that really struggles with like being touched back or feeling comfortable receiving touch, this can actually be a really great exercise for this, because when you move in a way or when you communicate something that says, I don't like this, you stop instantly, right? You can have a safe word, it can be a movement, it can be something else where you're communicating, I don't want to have that happen, let's not go there. You can use more of like a red light, green light, or even like a hot versus cold system to indicate like, oh, that touch is like really good, do it more, or you're getting farther away, please stop doing that, try something else. And that can develop a level of confidence in the relationship that like this person is going to respect my boundaries. They know what my boundaries are, they know what I like, and then that can allow you to have more permission to relax into that relationship and feel more comfortable and confident receiving and giving different types of touch. But I have been filming for like over half an hour, so I feel like maybe this is a good enough introduction for now, like how to actually do this kind of play and what that can look like. I think eventually as you gain more of a skill set doing this, you can do this during any type of scene. You can do this during an impact play scene, during bondage, during role play of any kind. It just depends on your own perspective on how you're doing it. I think for a lot of people, they're probably going to want to stay in like the out of body subspacey territory, but I think it can actually give you a whole other like different kind of very beneficial headspace to be like just fully present in the moment, not in a dissociating way, but in a like kind of a flow state, I guess. Maybe that might be the word for it. I'm not sure. I'll look up that later. If you know, let me know in a comment down below. But anyways, that's going to be everything for now, you all. Thank you all so much for watching. I really enjoyed getting to make this. I would love to hear your thoughts in a comment down below. If you've not already, please do subscribe, because I make videos twice a week about all different kink and BDSM related topics. And finally, if you want to support what I do, the best you can do that is with Patreon. Link to that will be down below. If you do already support over there, thank you so, so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.